Kadasara Gonatha Patita Pavan Kadasara Gonatha Patita Pavan Kamora Bhatta Yoga Kaviraj Kamora Bhatta Yoga Kaviraj Ekakale kota gela Goranataraj Ekakale kota gela Goranataraj Pashane kuti bomata Andale pachibo Pashane kuti bomata Andale pachibo Goranga gunera nide kotra gele papo Goranga gunera nide kotra gele papo Se sabasangira sange Ye koilo pilas Se sabasangira sange Ye koilo pilas Se sangana paya kande narotamadas Sesangana Paya Kande Naratamadas Ye Anilo Premadana Karuna Pracho Ye Anilo Premadana Karuna Pracho Heno Prabhu Kata Gela Charya Chako Heno Prabhu Kata Gela Charya Chako Jai Vaishnav Thakur, Jai Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jai Vaishnav Thakur. Jai Vaishnav Thakur, Jai Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jai Vaishnav Thakur. Srila Gaura Kishore, Srila Gaura Kishore, Gaura Kishore, Srila Gaura Kishore. Srila Gaura Kishore, Srila Gaura Kishore, Gaura Kishore, Srila Gaura Kishore. Transcribed Paramahans, Periphragtic Charis, System of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON Samstapacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Srila Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki. Srila Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki. Srila Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki. Go Premanande. All glories to the Samul devotees. All glories to the Samul devotees. All glories to the Samul devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Oh.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. On this holy occasion of Disappearance Day of Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, and this holy month of Kartik, in this holy land of Srila Prabhupada birthplace, Kolkata, we are extremely honored and blessed and happy to have wonderful association of His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami Maharaj. Haribo! Bhakti Chaitanya Swami Maharaj is born and brought up in New Zealand, where he met Srila Prabhupada during his school days, college days, and later on in 1973, he joined ISKCON in London, and for last 50 years, he has been traveling and preaching and taking many important responsibilities in mission of Srila Prabhupada. In 1980s, he shifted to South Africa, where he had been a temple president of a rural community. Then he was instrumental in developing this one of the very most beautiful and famous temples of ISKCON, ISKCON Durban, the Temple of Understanding. And then he has been also instrumental in developing outreach in Johannesburg and all these South African cities. Later, he took up the responsibility of regional secretary and then governing body commissioner. So currently he's serving as GBC of our International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and he's traveling and preaching around the world. He's also serving as initiating guru, and he has written many beautiful books like Vrindavan, The Playground of God, and also traveling in service of Srila Prabhupada, his book volume 1, 2, and 3. So actually, it's extremely. Maharaj also teaches in VIHE and other places. We have many times his association online, but today we are so happy that we are having a session here directly. So let us welcome His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami Maharaj by loudly chanting 3 times. Haribo! Haribo! Also, many wonderful devotees have come with Maharaj. We also welcome them by loudly chanting. Haribo! 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 Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bahut Dhanyavad. And my Bengali is not good. My mere Hindi, Bahut Kharab hai. Also, so we'll stick to English if that's okay. All right.
How many of you understand English? Everybody understands English.
Yes, okay. So today then is the Disappearance Day, Turabhav. Ceremony for Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj, very important person in our line there, and just such an outstanding devotee, amazing devotee. And so let us just focus on him and some of his qualities and pastimes. It would take the whole day probably to really go through everything, but a little bit we can touch on these things and then have something to meditate on and remember during the day. So, but first of all, please repeat after me. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Right, so devotees, you know, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he, one of the many important things he said was that Madhavatiti Bhakti Janani. And, you know, you're Bengali, so you understand that these important special occasions connected with the Lord and his devotees, these are like the mothers of our bhakti. Therefore, as much as possible, we should really try to observe these occasions nicely and immerse ourselves in the different pastimes and different points which are there in relation to the particular person, the particular occasion. Here at Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj, a very extraordinary devotee, will go through a few of his pastimes, and we'll read something actually from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, some of his realizations about his spiritual master. And, that's it's all extremely important. And then during the day, let's try and remember these things and fill our hearts with some of this nectar of Srila Gaur Babaji Maharaj. So Srila Prabhupada, at least in talking about Srila Gaur Babaji Maharaj, he made the point that in regard to his early life, say his life at least before he left home and really just fully dedicated himself to Krishna consciousness. We know a little bit about that, really just a little, not much at all. And, of course, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. So even though, there's a few things there, but I'm not going to say anything about them. Yeah. At a certain point, after his wife passed away, he went to Vrindavan. And he stayed in Vrindavan for about 30 years before going back to the Navadvip area. So he lived to quite an age, in other words. But when he initially arrived in Vrindavan like Vraj Mandala, the greater Vrindavan area, then he lived a very austere way of life. He was just doing madhu curry, just begging some foodstuff, some prasad, some roti or something like that from the villagers. Of course, even now, it's possible to do that to some degree. To some degree, yeah. But that's how he was living. And he had no fixed place of residence. In fact, he had no place of residence, actually. He was, as the 6 Goswamis were often doing, he was living under trees and living under different trees. The 6 Goswamis are famous for changing tree every night because they didn't want to become attached. Yeah. Like us sannyasi brahmacharis, I think most of you are brahmacharis, am I right? Yeah. You can become attached to your little spot in the ashram and your little, if you have a little locker with a few clothes and a few things, you can get attached. I mean, our capacity for becoming materially attached is really quite substantial. Oh, yes. We can become attached to almost anything. But he was living under a tree, often a different tree every night. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Vrindavan area, and you would know that around this time, or even, say around this time, end of November, and what to speak of December, what to speak of January, in Vrindavan it becomes cold. And sometimes, I've been in Vrindavan in January, sometimes it's less than 0 centigrade, means it would snow. But the thing is, it's too dry to snow, but otherwise it would snow. Means it's pretty cold, really very cold. I don't know if you've been in snow before, but yeah, so he would live like that. I mean, the 6 Goswamis would, and he would also. All those years he stayed in the Vrindavan area, and he lived a very, very austere way of life, extremely austere. And among other things, I mentioned, begging. He would not have any pocket money for buying. I remember when I first went, 1976, to India, where we were staying in Mayapur, and all you could drink was water from the pump, which is still there by the front entrance. And it's not the best water. And they were using that water for everything, for bathing. Sri Sri Gaunitai Ki Jai. They're using that water for bathing, for cooking, and for drinking. So it was either that or daubs. And when you got to Vrindavan, it was either the water from in front of the temple. I don't know if any of you remember the pump that used to be there in front of the Krishna Balaram temple. But it was like drinking seawater. Yeah, like salt, real salt water. So it was either that or go down to Loy Bazaar and buy a limca, which, anyway, Hare Krishna. So, but Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj, he was living a life just like the 6 Goswamis. And he would, he had like Raghunath Das Goswami, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. He had a program of every day offering obeisances to 1,000 deities and 2,000 devotees, Raghunath Das Goswami. Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj, he would always offer his obeisances to all the bridge buses. Of course, in those days, bridge buses, at least the great majority, were really different from today's bridge buses. A lot of today's bridge buses are sort of, on the surface at least, they're kind of questionable. But he would offer his obeisances to all the bridge buses. Means all the people. He'd offer obeisances to all the trees. He'd offer obeisances to all the birds, all the animals, the dogs. He'd offer obeisances to the flowers. This was Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj. And sometimes he'd just offer obeisances to the land. He'd just lie down and stay down and offer prayers and roll and like that for hours. He would do things like this out of deep, deep respect and love for the sacred Dham. So he would move about, and Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj, in general, he had one like foundational program. I mean, there are different things he'd do, we mentioned some. But his foundational program was chanting the holy names. Just chanting the holy names. Sometimes he would chant on beads. Sometimes he'd chant on like a strip of cloth. He'd get some sort of strip of cloth and tie knots in it. And he would chant on the knots in the strip of cloth because, there's an idea, and it's there in the Shad Goswami Astakam, if you're familiar with that the 6 Goswamis, what's the verse anyway? I forget the Sankhya Purvaka. Yeah, Sankhya. He would keep track. But there's a Srinivasacharya singing about the 6 Goswamis. They would keep track. Occasionally you meet someone you may have met. I've met a number of people, like from people from Hindu backgrounds, and they have some like affiliation, some attraction to Krishna consciousness to some degree or another. And so you ask them, so are you chanting? Do you chant? He says, yes, I chant. I chant all the time. And I'd ask, you have beads, you chant on beads. I just chant all the time. Which you can translate that. If you translate that into sort of the real sense, means not serious. Not serious. Otherwise, Sankhya Purvaka Nama. Always keeping track. The 6 Goswamis would keep track. Of course, there are very few pictures of Lord Chaitanya, but one picture, done like when he was present, there's one picture, Lord Chaitanya, he's also holding a piece of cloth with knots in it. He was not so much chanting on beads as such, but he would chant like that, keeping track of the number. As Prabhupada would say, the numerical strength, because it gives strength. It's like the foundation for our spiritual strength. So anyway, he lived there in Vrindavan for 30 years, moving around here and there and doing different things like we said. There's a few places where there are like bhajan kutirs. At Radha Kund, there's a bhajan kutir. It's part of one of the Gaudiya Math temples there, just a little bit, not right by Radha Kund, but there's a bhajan kutir of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj there. He would come and spend some time there. So like this, he would move around, and if people would try to come and serve him, then generally he wouldn't allow them. This was one of his characteristics. As time went on also, he wouldn't accept service. In fact, if we just jump ahead, there's one occasion, you may have heard about it, over on Godrumdweep, just on the banks of the Jalangi, Swananda Sukhada Kunj, where Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur lived for quite some time, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta lived also with him for some time. And there's a bhajan kutir there, of course. So one time, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came and offered to do some service for Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. And you may have heard Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj got up and ran and threw himself in the Ganges, saying that he's just going to drown himself. And he was not seen or heard of for a month. Then one day he appeared again at Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house. So anyway, after 30 years, he went to Navadvip and moved about there. And there are all sorts of incidents, different incidents which happened under different circumstances there while he was in Navadvip. There was one Maharaj of Kazimba. I don't know where Kazimba is, but anyway, he was one of the traditional Maharajas in India. And he invited Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj to come and stay in his palace. And he would provide accommodation and everything for him. Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj refused. And he said, no, I cannot come, because if I see that opulence and experience it a little, I may become tempted. You know, the likelihood of him becoming tempted, really speaking, is zero. But as an extremely humble devotee, he felt like that. So he refused. And what he did was that he sent a message back. In reply, he sent a message back that you, Maharaj, you should free yourself from the shackles of wealth. You should just give your kingdom and everything to your relatives. Come and live with me, and I will arrange for a shed to be prepared, and you and I, we will do Hari Bhajan together. We will just chant together. So this is my invitation to you. And you might think that maybe he's being sarcastic or, you know, being kind of heavy with him, but he meant it. Really meant it, because he understood very clearly that this is what will help. And all the wealth and power and all that, it's not going to help anyone at all in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, so one devotee, there was a festival organized in Navadvip. It's a devotee festival, Vaishnava festival. And one devotee named Haran came from the festival and brought some prasad from the festival. And Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj refused the prasadam. And Haran was sort of a little bit of an associate. Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj had some sort of circle of associates, not a lot. As far as I understand, not as many as we have sitting here today, but there were a few devotees of different levels and different types of devotees who sort of would hang around him, and he wouldn't chase them away. Some people he'd chase away. This time, with Naren, who offered him the prasadam from the devotee festival, Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj wouldn't speak to him for 3 days. Naren would come and offer obeisances and try and say something. Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj would just remain silent and just ignore him. Yeah, he was, you know, he's Avadhuta, of course. Avadhuta, someone who's just so deeply absorbed in Krishna consciousness. He just loses contact with the external world, and so therefore doesn't really interact in terms of like external circumstances and situations. So he ignored this Naren for 3 days. And then after 3 days, he told him, you know, the reason I refused the prasadam was because the festival had been financed, like sponsored, by some woman who had a questionable profession. So therefore, he wouldn't have anything to do with it, and even the prasadam wouldn't touch and didn't touch at all. Yes. So once on Sanatana Goswami's disappearance day, which was not long ago, right? Anyway, a little while ago, I know Bhakti Churu Maharaj had like an affiliation for Srila Sanatana Goswami. So on Sanatana Goswami's disappearance day, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj told his group, this little group who sort of would spend time around him from time to time, we will have a festival. Yeah. Well, actually coming up a couple of days before Sanatana Goswami's disappearance day, a couple of days before, he said, we will have a festival. And the devotees asked, so yes, okay, we will organize. Please tell us, what preparations would you like made? And Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, our preparation, or what we will do in the festival, our observation will be, we will miss a meal. We will miss a meal. This will be our observation. And we will just chant around the clock. I don't think so many of them really got into it because they were, you know, to some degree a questionable group. But that's what he said. That was, to him, that was a festival. I know to many devotees, festival, I mean, there's different things, but one of the very important things is the feast. In the case of many devotees, which is fine. It's okay. It's not like it's a deviation. But Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj was on a different level of Krishna consciousness, and for him, festival meant that we will not bother, we will not be distracted with this eating business, but we will just focus more on chanting and focus on more chanting. That will be our festival. And that he felt this is a festival like that. Here's an interesting one. Anyway, it's recorded. One doctor, devotee doctor, came to him and said, I'm going to retire and I'm going to move to the Dham here and I'm going to provide medical services free. And Srila Gaur Kishore said, no, don't do that. It'll just encourage materially minded people to save money on medical bills. Anyway, you know, like his space he was in is a different type of space. And we have devotees who do this sort of thing. And we're not mentioning this as a criticism of such devotees. And Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, those who want to do Hari Bhajan should not be distracted by the chains of welfare activities. One time, you may have heard this story, it's a nice one. Someone came and offered to buy 5 katas of land. How much is 5 katas? Square feet, 3,600 or thereabouts. So it's about 350 square meters, something like that. So yeah, he offered to buy 5 katas of land for Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj to live, because he was continuing his program of just spending the night wherever he ended up that day. No fixed abode at all, and actually no abode at all. So Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj became annoyed. This is like a sort of devotee businessman type. And Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said that this Navadweep Dham is not part of the material world. You cannot buy part of it. He said, actually, you cannot buy 1 grain of sand. You have not got sufficient money to buy 1 grain of sand, because 1 grain of sand is worth more than all the gems, all the jewels in the world. And there are different versions sometimes of some of these stories, actually. There's another version of this story in which he says that you cannot buy 1 grain of sand for all the opulence of Vaikuntha. What to speak of all, the gold and jewels and whatnot, which are available in the shops in Kolkata. So yeah, so how can you buy 5 katas? You can't. It's just out of the question completely. So he would regularly, he was doing madhu curry. He would regularly beg rice, just rice on its own, and either would soak it in Ganga Jal, or sometimes he would actually cook it and offer it and take prasad, rice prasad. So one day he cooked and he ate a bit, but then he left some to take later in some sort of container. And a snake came. A snake came by. And a woman warned him, there's a snake around here. And Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, I will not touch this prasadam until you have gone. And he said, look how Maya works. Taking the form of compassion, Maya tries to hit her target. Maya can assume countless forms, and she's always trying to stop us doing Hari Bhajan. Then there's a famous story, quite well known, I'm sure you've heard it before. There was one devotee, kind of, little wealthy devotee, living in Navadweep. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj was spending his time on the other side of the Ganges at that stage. So this man, Giri Bahu, and his wife. They're devotees, like basically what you'd say, very sincere devotees. So they approached. They had a dharamshala, just, very simple pilgrims accommodation type of thing. I mean, many of these dharamshalas you see, they don't even have doors. It's just a floor, some walls, and a ceiling. So they had some form of dharamshala in Navadvip. And they came over and they wanted to do a service for Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. They said, please come over and we will give you a nice room. We will build you a new room in our dharamshala. And you can stay there and chant. And we'll provide you with prasadam. Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj famously said, yes, I will come and I will stay in the public latrine, the public toilet. I will stay there. And they said, Babaji Maharaj, that it would be our offense if we put you in a place like that. Just let us give you a very simple little room, very simple, and some very simple prasad. Please let us serve you like that. And Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, you give me a spot, just a little area in the public toilet, or go away. Just go. Just leave me alone. So they did that. They cleaned up a little corner in the toilet bathroom area, and he stayed there for a while. He was so extreme. There's avadutas, and then there's avadutas, if you know what I mean. There are different degrees of like extremists in Krishna consciousness. He was really at one end, the extreme end of the extremists. They say, in order to avoid people coming and just bowing down and trying to give him gifts, sometimes he would go and live in like the stool field, just to keep people away. Yeah, he was extreme. There's one story that in Navadvip, because he would move around, he'd come across to Navadvip from time to time. So one time one time he came across, and Navadvip in those days also, it's a busy place and a busy place of pilgrimage. So people would come. He was well known. People would come and offer respect, etc. So in order to put them off, what he would do sometimes, there was a prostitute, famous prostitute, living in Navadvip. And she was a successful prostitute. She had a nice house with a veranda in front on one of the sort of prominent streets in Navadvip town. Sometimes he would go and sit there for hours on a chair, and he would get some expensive, nice, colorful silk clothes and dress himself up and sit there, and people would come by and he would wave to the people and call out to them. Says, see, here I am. Yeah, just to put them off. Just so they'd think, look at this man. Now, we thought he's a big sadhu, but he's something else. So he would do things like that deliberately to put people off because he hated being honored. He hated being honored, yeah. So one day, one devotee asked Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj about some famous Bhagavatam reciter who was visiting the area. And before, when he would start his recitation, he would chant, Gora, 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 in a very sort of ecstatic type of way. And so this devotee came and told Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, said, yeah, he does like that. And, you know, he really becomes ecstatic when he's chanting Gora, Gora. Srila Gaur Kishore said, actually, he's chanting money, money. That's what he's chanting. Yeah. And he said, those who recite Srimad Bhagavatam for payment are not entitled to chant the holy name of the Lord, any holy name of the Lord. Then, when it comes to his relationship with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, of course there's a lot of information, and I will just in a minute or two read a few paragraphs of things he actually said. But he would refer to, he initiated Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. I'm sure you know that story. Bhaktisiddhanta had to come 3 times. First time, he asked for initiation. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj just laughed at him and said, I don't initiate people. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was insisting. So Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, all right, come back tomorrow. I will ask Mahaprabhu. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came back the next day and he asked, what did Mahaprabhu say? Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, oh, I forgot to ask him. But come back, I'll ask him. So 3rd time Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came back and he asked, so what did Mahaprabhu say? Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, I asked him. He did not reply. So, in other words, please go away. So then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta famously went out. There was some sort of little rope bridge or something, or just he could get out a little bit across a little branch of the Ganges, and he said, if you won't accept me, I'm just going to throw myself in the Ganga and drown right now. And Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj could see that here is a qualified person. Actually, he already knew that because they knew each other quite well. Because Gaur Kishore would come and visit and stay at Swananda Sukhada Kunj, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's place. And at that time, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was living there, at least some of the time. So he knew this is a qualified person, so he accepted him. Right, but he would, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was his only initiated disciple. Like we said, there was a group of, devotees to whatever degree who would come and spend time with him. And he wouldn't really interact with them, he'd just chant, but they would sit there. So, but he would refer, when he would ever mention Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to anyone, including Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he would refer to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta as my Prabhu, my master, not my disciple, but my Prabhu like this, my Prabhu like that. Yes, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, one very interesting thing he said about Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj. He said that even though he was illiterate, means he couldn't read or write. In other words, he'd never read Bhagavad Gita even. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, whenever he would open his mouth, out would come the Vedic literatures. He was like that, just completely infused with Shastra. So let me just read, it's just a couple of few paragraphs recorded from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta talking about his spiritual master. When, out of false ego, I was thinking, I'm a great scholar of mathematics and philosophy. Let all big pundits come at any time, day or night, and I will cut their propositions to pieces. At that time, I got the darshan of the lotus feet of Sri Gurudev. He ignored everything that was previously appreciated in me, my truthfulness, my moral and pious life, and my intellectualism. He ignored them, knowing them to be of little value. When I saw that he ignored whatever was good in me, I realized how good he himself must be, who could neglect so many, quote unquote, good qualities in me. What inconceivable wealth he possessed. Being neglected by him, I understood that there was no one more fallen and contemptible than myself. That was my actual identity. The very things that I adjudged desiderata, means the most desirable, such as scholarship and upright character, this exalted soul regarded as valueless. I apprehended that within himself this noble personality possessed priceless treasure. I then pondered that either he's extremely puffed up or he is exceedingly merciful. I then haughtily said to my Gurudev, you are a worshipper of that cheetah and debauch, Krishna. So why should you be compassionate to someone like me, dedicated to ordinary morality? Humbly and sincerely, I prayed to the Supreme Lord for his mercy. Later, by his grace, I recognized that without receiving the blessings of this peerless saint and without serving him, nothing good could happen to me. When I accepted that and acted accordingly, and then received the causeless, unlimited grace of my Sri Gurudev and refuge at his lotus feet, I deemed my life fulfilled. There's more, but it's nice, isn't it? Hare Krishna. So anyway, there's some things you can think about. Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj Ki. Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj Ki. Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj Ke. Srila Prabhupada Ke. Gaur Premanande. Okay, anyone? Ek Prashna. One or two. Or comments.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for such an inspiring class on life of Gaur Kishore Das Baj Maharaj. When you hear about him, it's really very inspiring. At the same time, it's very humbling, and we feel that, oh, really, what are we doing? So here, one thing we are discussing about how he was so much. He didn't want anybody to serve him. He didn't want any land. He didn't want any money and all these things. So, and he was saying those who are chanting for money, they cannot actually chant the holy names. Sometimes in service of Krishna consciousness, we in our mind also is that we have to build temple, we have to raise money, we have to. Sometimes we see try to preach to influential people and all these things, so that maybe they can contribute for the project. So, how to deal with that? Because really.
Yeah, sure. Well, like we said, he was avaduta. And there are avadutas and avadutas, but he really was a very extreme avaduta. Even Prabhupada made some reference that Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj at one point earlier in his life, he tried to preach, but somehow or other he saw that it didn't seem any results were coming. So he decided just to chant and not to preach. So that was his determination, his vow, and his whole being. But for us, our position, our mission and what we're meant to do as devotees is really quite different. We are meant to spread Krishna consciousness, which includes, in some cases, building temples and, sort of like making big festivals, presenting Krishna consciousness, you could say, in very impressive ways. And that was Prabhupada's instruction. And it was also the example, to one degree or another, it was the example of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Yeah. He accepted some opulence sometimes, like being driven in big motor cars and wearing expensive clothes and things like that. But specifically for preaching as a service. So we have our mission from Prabhupada, which in many cases includes those things. So therefore, in principle, first point, in principle, you can't say that what is being done is just wrong in principle. Having said that, we need to be careful because he felt that if he just visited that palace and stayed there for a while, he felt he might become contaminated. So in terms of potential for becoming contaminated, we have a far greater potential. In fact, we've noticed, like here in India, for example, when Prabhupada was preaching personally and the movement was just starting, for some time, many people were not coming. And even many young men were not coming and becoming brahmacharis because ISKCON was just a small thing. Really, it was. Initially, it was very small. I mean, like when Prabhupada was in Jhansi, ISKCON, we're talking about literally a one-man program. Yeah, so people were not impressed. But then as ISKCON grew in one way or another, then so many people who otherwise were not impressed suddenly became impressed. And even young men who otherwise would think, let me just get a job doing something, then they become impressed and become good devotees too. So, but we should know, we really need to know and bear in mind that we have the potential for becoming attached to like Prabhupada said, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta opened the big Bug Bazaar temple, their biggest temple, then some of his senior disciples, they came and they argued over who will have which room, like that. And so Srila Bhaktisiddhanta really didn't appreciate that. And he said, seeing this, I feel maybe we should just take the marble and just sell it and print books. Yeah, so we need to be careful because we all, each one of us has the potential for becoming materially attached. Yeah. To, some name and fame. Like I see now, when you move around, people just walk up to you. Hare Krishna. In the airport yesterday, one of the workers just walked up to me, Hare Krishna, and started talking to me about Jaipataka Maharaj. And so you become well known, and it's a type of intoxicant. Like we've had experience in South Africa, interesting point. Some boy joins the temple and, he's just learned how to put on a dhoti without it either falling off or, being sort of not looking proper. But he goes out, he's sent out to distribute books door to door in the Indian areas, knocks on the door, and someone comes to the door and sees him and says, "Oh, Swami has come," and invites him in. "Please come in, Swami. Have a seat. Would you like some fruit?" And they run off, get him some fruit and some juice or some milk, would you like? And he's sitting there, he's been living in the temple for a matter of days, but he's thinking, hey, it's pretty good being a Swami. So we have to watch out for these things because, it's got the potential to even become like a cancer. And cancer basically means an irresistible disease. A disease, once you got it, you can't stop it. Yeah. So name, fame, comfort, luxury, and all, luxurious prasadam, and etc., etc. We got to, this is something we can learn particularly from Srila Gaur Babaji Maharaj, the principle to to really keep our focus on the mission of actually helping people become Krishna conscious rather than what's in it for me. Like karma yoga, one for Krishna, one for me. One for Krishna, one for me. And if I'm getting short of money, none for Krishna, two for me. Is that okay? But we have to preach vigorously. And the thing is, if we preach vigorously, purification will be there. And inspiration will be there. And we'll be able to deal with these things effectively in Krishna consciousness rather than get sort of undermined. Yeah. Any other comment, question? Some words of wisdom from senior devotees?
Anybody, any questions? Yes.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, you mentioned the pastime of Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj. Once one questionable lady, she sponsored feast.
Right. A whole
And,
festival, including the feast.
So Maharaj, Maharaj denied to take prasad there.
That's right.
So
or
now
from there.
Yes. Yeah. So now in our ISKCON also, we get donations from different peoples.
Yes.
And some people, they may earn in a proper way, some may not earn proper way, legally earn. And we get. And we offer the Lord and we take also prasad.
Right.
So how much it will impact in our consciousness also,
yes.
and how to take it and what to understand it.
That's a good point. You know, Srila Prabhupada, there was one, like a small, very small group of devotees. I mean, devotees, they were very serious, and one of them is still practicing today. But they, at that time, they were drug dealers. They were drug dealers and making thousands of dollars, like big drug dealers. But they were devotees and they would donate to Prabhupada. I mean, they'd donate to ISKCON, and when Prabhupada came, they'd donate to him directly. But then when Prabhupada found out that this money is coming from selling drugs, then from that point on, Prabhupada refused to accept the money. He wouldn't accept the money and didn't accept the money. So, you know, I mean, that's a very important example. I mean, particularly if it's drug money, you know, then it's very clear. But, you know, money from like real criminal activities, like real gangsters, real mafia. Yeah. That, you know, it may not be good to take that money if it's coming from like, you know, it's one thing if someone's a businessman and, as Prabhupada said, when they're trying to sell you something, they say, for you, I'm making no profit. Then you know it's a lie. Of course he's making a profit. Otherwise he'll go bankrupt. So we can accept that sort of money. But if you've got like real criminals, then I would say it's arguable that it may not be good to accept that money. I mean, particularly if they're known criminals and we become known for accepting money from known criminals, then, you know, it can reflect very badly on us. So like that, but your average businessman, Well, I can tell you, I had an experience in Russia once. I was at this one town, way out in Siberia, and they put me in the flat. I was staying there like 3-4 days. I was staying in the flat of one young man who was a devotee, but a working man. And I noticed the first night that I was going to take rest, he was going out to work. So I asked him, really, you're going to work now, like 9 o'clock at night or whatever it is? What sort of work do you do? And he said, well, yeah, what do I do? He said, I transport things. I said, really? At night? Yeah, I transport things at night. In other words, he's transporting stolen goods. And you know what happened? He didn't come back that night. And he was never heard of again. He was in a town and city in Russia, Chita. Never been heard of. I've been back there so many times and asked them, where's this fellow? No, we don't know, he disappeared. So, Hare Krishna. I mean, of course, one has to use one's intelligence. But, if you ask me, particularly when it's one thing to accept money from people who say, oh, I'm not making a profit. It's a lie. It is dishonest. But it's another thing to accept money from real criminals, gangster types. Think about it. Is that okay?
Maharaj, related to this also, one more question is there, that sometimes the donor, they give Lakshmi for sponsoring the feast on their death of their forefathers or Shraddha ceremony.
Right.
So then that we hear 2 times. Sometimes we hear we should take that prasad. Sometimes we hear we should not take the prasad. So what we should do during the Shraddha, that even though they give money to the temple and we cook prasad and we offer to the Lord. So whether it's recommendable to eat or not, what to do?
Well, in terms of like just the cleanliness of the money, you could say, my understanding and our practice, in fact, at least where I'm involved, is we do accept that money. And then, the way, at least the way we do such a ceremony, the food, the bhoga is offered to the Lord in the usual way. Then some plate is made up and placed in front of a picture of the departed person, family member. And then that prasadam is then placed in a river or something like that. But otherwise, the prasadam, which was sponsored with the money, but the prasadam, it's been offered properly, maybe even to Gaur Nitai on the altar, or at least, it's been offered in a bona fide way. Then that prasadam can be taken and it's beneficial, it's prasadam. TK. Hare Krishna, devotees. Well, today we're fasting, right? Till noon, chanting, dancing, and fasting. It's a very nice program. And fasting is good because, you know what they say? What is it? What's the term? Hunger. Hunger is the best cook. In other words, the more hungry you are, the better the prasadam tastes. And even you may take something which normally you wouldn't. You'd say, no, I don't take that. Like, I'm not a jackfruit fan. But then if you're hungry enough, then, oh, okay, I'll take some jackfruit. Chanting, dancing, and fasting. Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki. Hare Krishna.
His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami Maharaj ki.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
So tomorrow morning, Maharaj will be giving Bhagavatam class at Albert Road, Sri Albert Radha Govind Mandir. All of you are most welcome.